Welcome to Chapter 2 of Radiating Literature. Time to see if we meet that mysterious Cinderella again. I wonder, or was that just a random story? Do writers have a purpose when they set out writing? Do they find it later in editing, or do they just never find it? Let's find out. Alright, we are now on to Chapter 2, called An Appeal for Help. So I bet we're going to see her again. Anyways, it was 5 minutes past 9 when I entered our joint sitting room. Sorry, gotta scratch my dog's ear. She has a cone, and when she tries to scratch her ear with her foot, she can't get it. So I have to take care of it for her. Okay, sorry. It was 5 minutes past 9 when I entered our joint sitting room for breakfast on the following morning. My friend Poirot, exact to the minute as usual, was just tapping the shell of his second egg. He beamed upon me as I entered. "You've slept well, yes? You have recovered from the crossing so terrible? It is a marvel. Almost you are exact this morning, Parnzel. But your tie is not symmetrical. Permit that I rearrange him." I've never seen a tie anthropomorphized before. I also just feel like all of this is implying they're a couple. Anyways, elsewhere I have described Hercule Poirot, an extraordinary little man, height 5 feet 4 inches. That's my height. Egg-shaped head carried a little to one side, eyes that shone green when he was excited, stiff military mustache, air of dignity immense. Sorry, there's an exclamation mark there, so I wanted to put some effort into it. He was neat and dandified. That's a fun word. I'm going to use dandified more. In appearance. For neatness of any kind, he had an absolute passion. To see an ornament set crooked. Calm down, little girl. Set crooked, or a speck of dust, or a slight disarray in one's attire, was torture to the little man, until he could ease his feelings by remedying the matter. Order and method were his gods. Those are also capitalized, if you're wondering. He had a certain disdain for tangible evidence, such as footprints and cigarette ash, and would maintain that, taken by themselves, they would never enable a detective to solve a problem. Poirot, are you saying that evidence that can be held up in a court of law is not useful to a detective? Because I feel like that's wrong. What do we do? You also think he's being a bad detective right now, right? You're just gonna walk off because of it. Okay. That's where we're at. Oops. Sorry, I forgot to mute my computer. Then he would tap his egg-shaped head with absurd complacency. It's weird to keep calling his head egg-shaped when we just talked about him eating eggs. Anyways, and that's an editor's fault, by the way. Then he would tap his egg-shaped head with absurd complacency and remark with great satisfaction, "The true work, it is done from within, the little gray cells. Remember always the little gray cells, mon ami." I slipped into my seat and remarked idly in answer to Poirot's greeting that an hour's sea passage from Calais to Dover could hardly be dignified by the epithet terrible. Poirot waved his egg spoon in a vigorous refutation of my remark. "Du tau." Oh God, I'm so sorry, guys. I can't pronounce French. "If for an hour one experiences sensations and emotions of the most terrible, one has lived many hours. Does not one of your English poets say that time is counted not by hours, but by heartbeats?" I fancy Browning was referring to something more romantic than seasickness, though. "Because he was an Englishman, an islander to whom La Mancha was nothing. Oh, you English, with no auteur, it is different. Figure to yourself what a lady of my acquaintance at the beginning of the war fled to Ostend. There she had a terrible crisis of nerves, impossible to escape further, except by crossing the sea, and she had horror, une horreur, I'm so sorry, of the sea. What did she do? Dès les Boches were drawing nearer. Imagine to yourself the terrible situation." "What did she do?" I inquired curiously. "Fortunately, her husband was homme pratique. He was also very calm. The crisis of the nerves, they affected him not. Il a importé simplement. Naturally, when he reached England, she was prostrate, but still breathed. Poirot shook his head seriously. I composed my face as best I could. Suddenly, he stiffened and pointed a dramatic finger at the toast rack. The toast rack did it. Ah, par exemple, c'est trop fort, he cried. What is it? This piece of toast. You remark him or not? Why are we anthropomorphizing everything? He whipped the offender out of the rack and held it up for me to examine. Is it a square? No. Is it a triangle? Again, no. Is it even round? No. Sorry, my dog's doing something weird. Is it of any shape remotely pleasing to the eye? What symmetry have we here? No. It's cut from a cottage loaf, I explained soothingly. Poirot threw me a withering glance. What an intelligence has my friend Hastings, he exclaimed sarcastically. Comprehend you not that I have forbidden such a loaf haphazard and shapeless, that no baker should permit himself to bake. Sorry, there's a lot of feelings about bread. I endeavored to distract his mind. Anything interesting coming by the post? Poirot shook... Oops, sorry, I got lost. Poirot shook his head with a dissatisfied air. I have not yet examined my letters, but nothing of interest arrives nowadays. The great criminals, the criminals of method, they do not exist. Isn't that good? The cases have been employed upon lately were banal to the last degree. In verity, I am reduced to recovering lost lapdogs for fashionable ladies. The last problem that presented any interest was that intricate little affair of the Yardley diamond, and that was how many months ago, my friend? He shook his head despondently, and I roared with laughter. Cheer up, Poirot, the luck will change. Open your letters. For all you know, there may be a great case looming on the horizon. Poirot smiled, and taking up the neat little letter opener with which he opened his correspondence, he slit... Sorry, my dog is trying to get to some cookies that she can't have. He slit the tops of several envelopes that lay by his plate. A bill, another bill. It is that I grow extravagant in my old age. Aha! A note from Yap. I'm guessing it's Yap, not Jap. I'm gonna go with Yap. Yes? Pricked up my ears. The Scotland Yard inspector had more than once introduced us to an interesting case. He merely thanks me in his fashion for a little point in the Aberystwyth, that's my best, Aberystwyth, going for it, case on which I was able to set him right. I'm delighted to have been of service. How does he thank you? I asked curiously. For I knew my Yap. Okay, sorry, y'all, I do have to pause. My dog's doing something just so strange. Okay, I'm back. She was most definitely trying to get my Chips Ahoy, but now I have her wrapped up in a blanket, so hopefully she will calm down. Okay. Let's see. How does he thank you? I asked curiously, for I knew my Yap. Excuse me. He's kind enough to say that I'm a wonderful sport for my age, and he was glad to have had the chance of letting me in on the case. This was so typical of Yap that I could not forbear a chuckle. Poirot continued to read his correspondence placidly. A suggestion that I should give a lecture to our local Boy Scouts. What are they called? Boy Scouts? Anyways. The Countess of Farfanac will be obliged if I will call and see her. Another lapdog without, no doubt. It actually just says without doubt, but sorry. And now for the last... Ah! I looked up, quick to notice the change of tone. Poirot was reading attentively. In a minute, he tossed the sheet over to me. This is out of the ordinary, mon ami. Read for yourself. The letter was written on a foreign type of paper in a bold, characteristic hand. I guess paper must have been different enough that you could tell? Okay, so it's from, again, I'm trying my best, I promise, with the French. This really isn't a joke. I'm doing my best. So it looks like the address is Villa Genevieve, Merlinville-sur-Mer, France. Dear Sir, which is italicized, I am in need of the service of a detective, and for reasons which I will give you later, do not wish to call in the official police. I have heard of you from several quarters, and all reports go to show that you are not only a man of decided ability, but one who also knows how to be discreet. I do not wish to trust the details to the post, but on account of a secret I possess, I go in daily fear of my life. I am convinced that the danger is imminent, and therefore I beg that you will lose no time in crossing to France. I will send a car to meet you at Calais, and if you will wire me when you are arriving, I shall be obliged if you will drop all cases you have on hand and devote yourself solely to my interests. I am prepared to pay any compensation necessary. I shall probably need your services for a considerable period of time, as it may be necessary for you to go out to Santiago, where I spent several years of my life. I shall be content for you to name your own fee, assuring you once more that the matter is urgent. Again, urgent is italicized. Yours faithfully, P.T. Renaud. I wonder how this day and age people checked on stuff like this, because this could just be so not legit. Below the signature was a hastily scrawled line, almost illegible. "For God's sake, come!" I handed the letter back with quickened pulses. But don't you just have one pulse? At last, I said, "Here is something distinctly out of the ordinary." "Yes, indeed," said Poirot meditatively. "You will go, of course," I continued. Poirot nodded. He was thinking deeply. Finally, he seemed to make up his mind and glanced up at the clock. His face was grave. "See you, my friend, this is no time to lose. The Continental Express leaves Victoria at 11 o'clock. Do not agitate yourself. There's plenty of time. We can allow 10 minutes for discussion. You'll accompany, n'est-ce pas?" Again, I'm really trying with the French. "Well, you told me yourself that your employer needed you not for the next few weeks." "Oh, that's all right, but this Mr. Renaud hints strongly that his business is private. Ta-ta-ta. I will manage him, Renaud. By the way, I seem to know the name. There's a well-known South American millionaire fellow. His name's Renaud. I don't know whether it could be the same." "But without doubt, that explains the mentions of Santiago. Santiago is in Chile, and Chile is in South America." So there's an exclamation mark. "Ah, but we must progress finely." "Dear me, Poirot," I said, my excitement rising. "I smell some goodly shekels in this. If we succeed, we shall make our fortunes." "Do not be too sure of that, my friend. A rich man and his money are not so easily parted." Ain't that the truth, guys? Me, I have seen a well-known millionaire turn out a tramful of people to seek for a dropped halfpenny. I acknowledge the wisdom of this. "In any case," continued Poirot, "it is not the money which attracts me here. Certainly it will be pleasant to have carte blanche in our investigations, one we can be sure that way of wasting no time. But it is something a little bizarre in this problem which arouses my interest. You remarked the postscript. How did it strike you?" I considered. He clearly wrote the letter, keeping himself well in hand, but at the end of his self-control snapped, and on the impulse of the moment he scrawled those 4 desperate words. But my friend shook his head energetically. "You are in error. See you not that while the ink of the signature is nearly black, that of the postscript is quite pale?" "Well," I said, puzzled. "Mon Dieu, mon ami! But use your little gray cells. Is it not obvious?" And Renaud wrote this letter. Without blotting it, he reread it carefully. Then, not an impulse, but deliberately, he added those last words and blotted the sheet. "But why?" "Parbleu! So that it should produce the effect upon me that it has upon you." "What?" I'm with you here. "What?" "Ma oui. To make sure of my coming, he reread the letter and was dissatisfied. It was not strong enough. Then why not just rewrite it?" He paused and then added softly, his eyes shining with that green light that always betokened inward excitement. "And so, mon ami, since that postscript was added not on impulse, but sobriety, in cold blood, the urgency is very great, and we must reach him as soon as possible." "Merlinville," I murmured thoughtfully. "I've heard of it, I think." Poirot nodded. "It is a quiet little place, but chic. It lies about midway between, oh god, Bologna, maybe? Bologna and Calais? I'm sorry, y'all. It is rapidly becoming the fashion. Rich English people who wish to be quiet are taking it up. M. Ronald has a house in England, I suppose. Yes, and Rutland Gate. How do you all know this? Oh, Rutland Gate, as far as I remember. Also a big place in the country, somewhere in Hertfordshire. But I really know very little about him. He doesn't do much in a social way. I believe he has large South American interests in the city, and has spent most of his life out in Chile and the Argentino. Do you mean Argentina? What? Okay. Well, we shall hear all the details from the man himself. Come, let us pack a small suitcase, which is hyphenated, each, and then a taxi to Victoria. And the Countess? I inquired with a smile. Ah, je m'en fiche. Her case was certainly not interesting. Why so sure of that? Because in the case she would have come, not written. In that case she would have come, not written. A woman cannot wait. Always remember that, Hastings. Cool. 11 o'clock saw our departure from Victoria on our way to Dover. Before starting, Poirot had dispatched a telegram to Mr. Renaud, giving the time of our arrival in Calais. I'm surprised you haven't invested in a few bottles of some seasick remedy, Poirot, I observed maliciously, as I recalled our conversation at breakfast. My friend, who was anxiously scanning the weather, turned a reproachful face upon me. Is it that you have forgotten the method most excellent Lavagier? His system, I practice it always. One balances oneself, if you remember, turning the head from the left to the right, breathing in and out, counting 6 between each breath. I demurred. You'll be rather tired of balancing yourself and counting 6 by the time you get to Santiago or Buenos Aires, which is not spelled correctly, or wherever it is you land. Quelle idea! You do not figure to yourself that I shall go to Santiago? Mr. Renaud suggested in his letter. He did not know the methods of Hercule Poirot. I do not run to and fro, making journeys and agitating myself. My work is done from within here. He tapped his forehead significantly. My question would be, how can you do it from within here if you haven't observed the stuff that seems to be related to Santiago? Whatever. As usual, this remark roused my argumentative faculty. It is all very well, Poirot, but I think you are falling into the habit of despising certain things too much. A fingerprint has led, sometimes, to the arrest and conviction of a murderer, and has without a doubt hanged more than one innocent man, remarked Poirot dryly. Okay, so I'm not saying that's not true, but that is also true of just, feelings about who did it. So, but surely the study of fingerprints and footprints, cigarette ash, different kinds of mud, and other clues that comprise the minute observation of details, all of these are of vital importance. But certainly I've never said otherwise. I thought you did. Okay. The trained observer, the expert, without doubt he is useful. But the others, the Hercule Poirot, they are above the experts. To them, the experts bring the facts. Their business is the method of the crime, its logical deduction, the proper sequence and order of the facts, above all, the true psychology of the case. You have hunted the fox, yes? The fox? Okay. I have hunted a bitch now and again, I said, rather bewildered by this abrupt change of subject. Why? Bien. This hunting of the fox, you need the dogs, no? Hounds, I corrected gently. Yes, of course. Is there a difference between hounds and dogs? Hounds are a kind of dog, right? But it's not inaccurate to say dogs. Anyways. But yet, Poirot waved his finger at me, you did not descend from your house and run along the ground smelling with your nose and uttering loud ow-ows. In spite of myself, I laughed immoderately. Poirot nodded in a satisfied manner. Are you suggesting, Poirot, that, scientists are like dogs? That's a lot. Okay. So, you leave the work of the dash hounds to the hounds? The reason I paused on that is it's D and then what looks like an M dash and then a space and then hounds. Okay. Yet you demand that I, Hercule Poirot, should make myself ridiculous by lying down, possibly on damp grass, to study hypothetical footprints. I think he's only suggesting it for real footprints. One should scoop up cigarette ash when I do not know one kind from the other. Remember the Plymouth Expressway mystery. The good Yop departed to make a survey on the railway line. When he returned, I, without having moved from my apartments, was able to tell him exactly what he had found. So you are of the opinion that Yop wasted his time? Not at all, since this evidence confirmed my theory. But I should have wasted my time if I had gone. Wow, your ego's insane. It is the same with so-called experts. Remember the handwriting testimony in the Cavendish case? One counsel's questioning brings out testimony as to the resemblances. The defense, spelled differently than we spell it, brings evidence to show dissimilarity. All the language is very technical, and the result, what we all knew in the first place. The writing was very like that of John Cavendish, and the psychological mind is faced with the question, why? Because it was actually his? Or because someone wished us to think it was his? I answered that question, mon ami, and answered it correctly. And Poirot, having effectively silenced, if not convinced me, leaned back with a satisfied air. On the boat, I knew better than to disturb my friend's solitude. The weather was gorgeous and the sea as smooth as the proverbial mill pond, so I was hardly surprised to hear that Levergueur's methods had once more justified itself when a smiling Poirot joined me on disembarking at Calais. A disappointment was in store for us, as no car had been sent to meet us, but Poirot put this down to his telegram having been delayed in transit. Since it is carte blanche, we will hire a car, he said cheerfully. You're really trusting this is all true. And a few minutes later he saw us creaking and jolting along in the most ramshackle of automobiles that ever plied for hire in the direction of plied for hire. My spirits were at their highest. What gorgeous air, I exclaimed. The promise to be a delightful trip. For you, yes. For me, I have work to do, remember, at our journey's end. Bah! I said cheerfully. You will discover all, ensure that Mr. Renaud's safety, run the would-be assassins to earth, and all will finish in a blaze of glory. You are sanguine, my friend. Doesn't that mean both hopeful and bloody? That's what Firefly told me. Anyways. Yes, I feel absolutely assured of success. Are you not the one and only Hercule Poirot? But my little friend did not rise to the bait. He was observing me gravely. You are what the Scotch people call fey, Hastings. It presages disaster. Okay. Nonsense. At any rate, you do not share my feelings. No, but I am afraid. Afraid of what? I do not know, but I have a premonition. Je ne sais quoi. See, that one I know how to say. He spoke so gravely that I was impressed in spite of myself. You're impressed by him speaking gravely? I have a feeling, he said slowly, that this is going to be a big affair. A long, troublesome problem that will not be easy to work out. I would have questioned him further, but we were just coming into the little town of Merlinville, and we slowed up to inquire the way to the Villa Genevieve. Straight on, monsieur, through the town. The Villa Genevieve is about half a mile the other side. You cannot miss it. A big villa overlooking the sea. We thanked our informant and drove on, leaving the town behind. A fork in the road brought us to a second halt. A peasant, was trudging towards us, and we waited for him to come up to us in order to ask the way again. There was a tiny villa standing rightly by the road, but it was too small and dilapidated to be the one we wanted. As we waited, the gate of it swung open, and a girl came out. The peasant was passing us now, and the driver leaned forward from his seat and asked for direction. The Villa Genevieve, just a few steps up this road, to the right, monsieur. You can see it if it were not for the curve. The chauffeur thanked him. Him? I thought there was a little girl. I don't understand. The chauffeur thanked him and started the car again. My eyes were fascinated by the girl, who stood with one hand on the gate watching us. I am an admirer of beauty, and here was one whom nobody could have passed without remark. Very tall, with the proportions of a young goddess. Oh, God. Her uncovered golden head, why do you have to say uncovered? That sounds so weird. Her uncovered golden head gleaming in the sunlight, I swore to myself that she was one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen. As we swung up the road, I turned my head to look after her. By Jove, Poirot, I exclaimed, did you see that young goddess? Poirot raised his eyebrows. Ça commence. Sorry, he murmured. Already you have seen a goddess. But hang it all, wasn't she? Possibly, I did not remark on the fact. Surely you noticed her. Mon ami, two people rarely see the same thing. You, for instance, saw a goddess. He hesitated. Yes, I saw only a girl with anxious eyes, said Poirot gravely. That's so sad. But at the moment we drew up at a big green gate, and simultaneously we both uttered an exclamation. Before it stood an imposing sergeant de ville. He held up his hand to bar our way. You cannot pass, monsieurs. But we wish to see Mr. Renaud, I cried. We have an appointment. This is his villa, isn't it? Yes, monsieur, but... Poirot leaned forward. But what? Monsieur Renaud was murdered this morning. Dun, dun, dun. And so with that, we end Chapter 2.